You're visiting the Mom Next Door and our stories of faith. I'm glad you dropped by for a visit. Please stay a while and hear what the Lord has done in the lives of moms just like you and me. Well, I have the best hobby in the world. It is so much fun to meet new people and then have them bravely raise their hand and say, pick me, pick me. Yes, I want to tell my story. And may God be glorified and each listener be encouraged today as we get to know my guest, Kim Dotson, and hear about God's transforming power and work in her life. Kim has a book that's recently been released, which I will link in the show notes, along with her website, social media, any place you can go to find her. But as we start out today, Kim, I wonder if you would just introduce yourself and then take us into your story. I don't know how far you want to go back, if you want to jump all the way to childhood or into those teen years, but I just welcome you to take the microphone and give us a little glimpse of your life.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me, Pam. Let me just start with kind of where the book came from. So I was sharing my story with somebody, and I don't really remember the context of it, but I just remember having this thought that, wow, I should write a book, because it reminded me as I was telling the details, I thought this kind of sounds like Forrest Gump, and that's just crazy. And so that thought just kind of lingered. And then let me see. So it was December 8th, 2017. And I can tell you the exact time. It was 7:10 a.m. And the name of a book and 9 chapters came to me. And I think I was at work, and I recorded it on the notes section of my phone. God had my attention. And so that was a while back. And I started working on it. Throughout time, I'd kind of work on it a little bit. I'd put it down. I'd work on it a little bit. I'd put it down. I work full time as a healthcare provider. And so I have a full-time job, and to just work on a book. So it ended up taking me 6 years to write it. I thought I was done back in 2022, but my story kind of shares some things that were painful. And back in 2022, when I thought I was done writing it, God kind of said, you are not quite done, because I think I just kind of felt like I wanted to inflict a little pain where pain had been inflicted. And so I pulled back and reviewed it, revised it. And now there's nothing in my story that's meant to shame anyone, to hurt anyone, to lash out at anyone. Yeah, so that's where the book idea came from. It really is a calling on my life that God gave me, and I stuck with the same name and put the chapters in, and then added further to that.
Well, it is really hard to retell our stories sometimes, because it never involves only us. There's always other people involved, and that is very painful. You've got all the relationships to juggle and potential future relationships with them, and we all have a different perspective. So yeah, that is a very hard thing to do, and very brave for you to work that out, but so important to be obedient to the Lord and wait on him, and for him to lead you into when the timing's right and what revisions were needed. So that is very wise.
Yeah. So it kind of starts out going back. I mean, there are some really painful experiences, and like I talk about forgiveness, and I just think of somebody who talked about somebody killing her son. And I kind of even think it was on your podcast where she talked about it. And she said, it was like a couple of weeks to show this person grace. And I just went, oh my gosh, a couple of weeks. I mean, I had carried stuff around for a really long time. And And God just worked that out in me. And it's so freeing that on like when we are called to forgive, we should forgive readily, but we don't always do that. And he really worked on obedience with me through this time. And everything came together so that now I look at the book and I just think, even when things go wrong, I just think this book is not, I mean, it's my life, but this is a project that God called me to partner with him. And what an honor to have this ability and this calling to partner with God, the God that created the universe. What an awesome thing that I can say, oh my gosh, obedience has brought me to this point.
Hmm. Well, I know you live on the West Coast, not far from where I used to live. I mean, a few hours, but it's kind of relative when I'm so far away now. But anyway, I wonder, what kind of home did you grow up in as a child? Does that play into the story?
Sure. So I have a brother and a sister. I'm the middle child. When I was in the second grade, my brother was in the first grade, my sister was in the third. My parents divorced. And it was kind of a different situation. And especially back in those days, it wasn't likely that the man would get custody of the children. But in our situation, our father got custody of us. And so my father's Native American. My mother is now gone, but she was white, Irish, and English. And so we were raised by our father. When I was in the third grade, my father remarried a Native American woman, and we moved from Coeur d'Alene to Missoula in Montana. So we went to a small school there, and we were raised with traditional Native values. But like you would see in my book, that my father had some negative experiences with my mother, them getting a divorce and racism he still does. And so the message that we got was not always positive when it came to people who were not native, who were white, as particularly. And that was really hard because I'm half white. And
Yeah.
so I kind of absorbed that. And even though my father was not saying anything negative about me, it kind of placed shame in deep inside, shame
Yeah.
for being half white. And then the opposite would happen. We moved to a reservation when I was in the seventh grade over in southeastern Montana, and it was the same thing. So actually, what I didn't say is, when we moved to Missoula, and my sister and my brother and I were the only kids who were native in that school. And so we were looked at as, oh, it's the Indian, whatever. And then
Mhm.
the opposite happened when we moved to this reservation in southeastern Montana, because we're not completely Indian, we're half white. And so we're not accepted as Indian, we're looked at as white. And in
Right.
white communities, we're not accepted as white because we're Indian.
Right.
And divorced at a time when, raised by our father. And so that just, what happened in me was this overwhelming shame, and it had nothing to do with me. But
Mm.
that's how I felt.
Right. The circumstances in life all
Mm-hmm.
were very confusing, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we lived in Missoula until I was in the eighth grade. And when I was in the eighth grade, I started rebelling a little bit. And my father and stepmother sent me to live in Spokane with my mother. And so hadn't lived with, I mean, we saw her every summer, but yeah, it was my parents were very strict. School was very important. At that point in time, in eighth grade, I thought I was going to be a doctor. I was
Mm.
really intelligent, and I worked really hard. And then when I moved in with my mother, things changed significantly. And actually, eighth grade was the last full year that I went to school. In ninth grade, I went because we were with a single mom now.
Yeah. What a different environment from being
Mhm.
in did you say reservation? I think you said from,
Well, just for a year, but
yeah.
because Missoula is not, but yes. Uh-huh.
Yes, but also to going from a situation where you're living with a dad and stepmom and they have all these rules and regulations for you, you
Mhm.
know, and I think sometimes when we have those rules, it's like it instills in us a certain level of value, like
Mhm.
it protects us. And so then when we to move somewhere outside of that where there weren't so many constraints, it's kind of like, well, I guess it really doesn't matter. Like I can do whatever, right? It almost it plays with your sense of worth and value to some extent.
Right.
What different home life those things were, right? They really contrasted.
Exactly. Yeah. And so my sister and I kind of went crazy and took advantage of our mother who was she had depression, and we took advantage of that. And that was a real turning point. So the last semester of ninth grade, I skipped every afternoon and kind of flunked out of the morning classes. So it changed the trajectory of the way my life was going. Shortly after that, I ran away from home and became sexually active. And by the age of 16, I was pregnant and traveling over to Idaho. So it's just about a 30-minute drive from Spokane, traveling over to Idaho, where my mother signed for me to get married underage, because in Idaho, at the age of 16, you could get married. And of course, fail, right? At
Mm.
16. Oh my gosh, I see 16-year-old people now, and I just think that is crazy. And so, yeah, we both failed my daughter
Mm.
horribly. And so she kind of did the same thing. You think about generational sin, and
Mm.
my mother passed it on to me, and I passed it on to her, and she passed it on to her children. Fortunately, God had a hand on me, and
Mm-hmm.
consequently and so my daughter is a Christian, and it was an opportunity to break that cycle,
Mm-hmm.
but not without some pain. There are consequences for our sin.
So take me back to that when you were the 16-year-old, you went over and you got married.
Mhm.
And yes, you said it ended in failure. How long were you married? And
So I was married from 16 to 21,
okay.
and then overlapped a relationship and got in a new relationship with somebody who was very similar. And we were married until I was 28. And
Okay.
that's when I got saved. And literally, like, of course, I was on fire and carried my Bible everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And it was such a drastic change from this person who
Yeah.
would drink and party. And yeah, my life changed significantly. And so he wanted a divorce, and that's what happened.
He wanted a divorce because now you were what do you call it? Back in those days, everybody said Bible thumper, right? So
And or roller, yeah.
a
Uh-huh.
holy roller, yeah.
Yeah,
So, and did
yeah.
you have just the one daughter at this time, or did you have another?
I just had my daughter at that time.
Okay.
And so that was marriage number two. And then shortly after that, I knew my husband today. I knew him. We worked together. I was a paramedic, and we worked at the same place, but we completely ran in different circles. So while I knew him, I didn't really know him, but we ended up getting together and we got married, and that was 29 years ago. And he's a Christian, and life is wonderful, but there were challenges along the way.
Yeah.
And so my book tells about those challenges because that's my life.
So, how did you encounter the Lord?
So I was in this marriage that wasn't healthy, and my daughter, like I said, that generational sin, that she started doing the same thing. There was a point in time where she left home and would not come home. She was at her friend's house, and I just recognized that I had completely lost control. We were raised in the Catholic Church, but we weren't devout Catholics. We went to church maybe Easter and Christmas and when somebody died. My sister had moved to Michigan, and she was the first person in our family to be saved. So while these problems were going on with my daughter, I would talk to my sister on the phone, and she shared the Lord with me and actually led me to the Lord over the phone. And
Mm.
then in May of 1992, May of 1992, my mother and I traveled to Michigan on Mother's Day. And I went to, I mean, she had been praying for me over the phone and led me to the Lord. But, I didn't know what to do with that. And so when
Mm.
I went to Michigan, she asked me, do you want to go to this Bible study with me? And I thought, sure. I'd never been to one. And so I went to this Bible study, and there was a woman who asked for prayer for her daughter. She and her daughter had gotten in a fight that morning. And so everybody just laid their hands on this woman and prayed. Having never done that before, I was open to it. I just put my hand out and prayed silently as well. And all of a sudden, there's a hand on my head, and the woman is praying for me.
It's kind of your first church experience.
Well, I think I had gone to church, but I hadn't gotten involved in the church. I went,
Right.
but yeah, this was kind of my first church experience. And when the leader put her hand on my head and started praying, I'm telling you, it's as if somebody took a warm pitcher of water and poured it over my head, and the warmth just enveloped me. I was overcome with emotion and start like shaking, sobbing, and and as fast as that sobbing was there, it was gone. And when I came home, I was not the same person because I'd
Mm.
been changed by the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was an amazing experience, and I feel so blessed to have experienced that.
Yeah. And that was, I mean, over 30 years ago, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, back in 1992.
So, at what point and in what ways did you see the Lord work after that moment in the church?
So even though my husband divorced me, the Lord blessed me with a Christian husband.
Mm.
And my daughter came back to live with us. I mean, she'd kind of bounced back and forth.
Yeah.
And when she was 15 years old, she was baptized.
Oh.
So things happened with her. The cycle kind of repeated, generational sin, but she since then has come back to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
A About a year after we got married, we had a son who's now 28 years old. And that little guy he grew up in the church. So having a child when you're 16 years old, when you're a child yourself, I mean,
Yeah.
my perception of myself and the reality of myself was I was a horrible mother. And
Oh.
I would have gone to my grave like I had no desire to have another child because I had such a horrible experience the first time. And not because I had a bad kid, because I was a bad mom. I did,
Mm.
at 16, you just don't have the tools. And
Right.
I had a much different father in my life for my second child than I did for my first. And that makes all the difference in the world. When
Right.
the two of you are yoked together, the parenting is much different than it was back when I was 16. And so I say that Kale's my son's name, that he's
Uh-huh.
my redemption child, because I would have thought I was a horrible mother if I didn't have him. God blessed me with him so that I could see I really can be a good mother. I do have it within me to be a good mother. And so redemption there. So that was just one way that God worked in my life.
So, your first experience of motherhood was really rough, and you were legitimately overwhelmed, frustrated, and feeling a little out of control. And I know there's some moms listening that feel that right now, and they're being like, she's telling my story, one
Mm-hmm.
rendition or another, right? But it wasn't always like that, because the Lord brings change. He's a redeemer, and he can
Mm-hmm.
redeem our situations. And that is what, in time, as he worked in your life and brought that healing, that's what he did. So, but then you met this other gentleman, and I'm trying to recall how you said you met him. Take me into how you met him and how you knew he was the one.
Yeah. So we met at work. Like I said, we ran in different circles. I was
Right.
married, and in my marriage that wasn't healthy, I was a drinker and a partier. And so I was a different person, and he kind of lived that life too. Now, what I didn't know about him in knowing of him was that he was raised in an Assembly of God church, and he had kind of he moved over to Spokane because he grew up on the coast, and he left the church and he was living his rebellious life out.
Okay.
And so when we came together, he came back to the church. In fact, his mother was thrilled because he met a Christian woman, and in a short period of time we decided to marry. So yeah, we came together, and our marriage has been based on a relationship with the Lord. And that's something that I didn't have with the first two husbands, because I got saved toward the end of the second marriage, and that just turned him off. Um, and so the difference that made now, so at that point, my daughter was 16 years old, and she came back to live with us. And it was just about a year. It was almost for her, it was like almost like a too little too late.
Mm.
Although she was baptized, the damage was done. She had been hurt tremendously. And
Yeah.
so she did the same thing I did, and got pregnant and had her first child at the end of her being 16. So my son has a nephew that's a year younger than him.
What things were you able to take and change from the way you raised your daughter and to how you raised your son, and what did that look like in a different way?
So having a partner who is involved, that made a difference. Having a Christian partner who is involved. And my son grew up in the church. He went to infants, to the toddlers and walkers and kindergartners, and every class that he was in, we volunteered together as he grew up in the church. And my daughter got that when she was 15 years old, but she was unchurched throughout her life, basically like I was. We were not good Catholics when we were. And so Kale grew up in the church. And we stayed at the same church that whole time. So he just knew having a relationship with the Lord from a young age, and just walk that out. Whereas with her, and had a good life with parents who loved each other and didn't fight and were always there, in the security of a,
Mhm.
of a Christian home where the
Mhm.
parents were walking with the Lord. And and so she didn't have that, but God had his hand on us. And
Mhm.
she was baptized when she was 15. He completes every good work. And
Mhm.
she came full circle, and she came back to the Lord. And in fact, we took her and her husband on a vacation this just a couple of months ago, and went to church on the beach. And so she was baptized when she was 15, but she really started walking out her faith and just felt called to be baptized again, where she really was making that decision. And it was so awesome to like that she went in there and was baptized in the ocean. And
Mhm.
such an emotional healing time. And that was really a healing time for the two of us as well, to go on vacation, because even though there's forgiveness there, I mean, she went through a lot as a child,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we can't undo, and we don't always forget things, but we are called to forgive. And just as she has forgiven me, I have forgiven my parents, and we can have healing and wholeness in Christ. So looking back, all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. It wasn't always fun. It wasn't always good, but as we look, we can see, yeah, God never took his hand off of us, and we're walking out what he has for us now.
So even though you're a believer now and you are married and raising the son together for the Lord, you're not a perfect parent. And none of us are perfect parents, right? And so I want ladies to hear that.
Right.
It does not
Absolutely.
matter. Like, he definitely redeemed your life, but we're never perfect. We're always still refining. And the Lord, works with our circumstances and makes a beautiful thing. And so, which he's done over and over in your life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So not only not a perfect parent, but just because we're Christian doesn't mean, or anybody for that matter, it doesn't mean that we're not going to walk through hard things. Because of sin in the world, we're going to experience difficult things, but he's there with us, and we do need to keep our eyes on him. We're going to be surrounded by storms, and they're going to come in different ways. People have health issues, people lose their jobs, people lose their loved ones, financial things. We're going to face storms, and if we can just, in the midst of those storms, keep our eyes focused on Jesus, not on the waves, not in the wind. And the waves in the wind get pretty loud sometimes,
Yeah.
and we just want to look, and then when we take our eyes off Jesus, we start to sink. But he, just like he pulled Peter up when Peter was doing the same thing and started to sink, he'll do that for us. And those trials and those challenges and those storms that we go through, can they just make our faith stronger if we're able to keep our eyes on Jesus, and we see, yeah, there is calm on the other side with him. That even the failures, he uses those failures to turn our lives around and to bring us closer to him. What the enemy means for harm, he'll do something amazing with. And so, even though there were challenges, full circle now, my daughter has a relationship with the Lord. He never took his hand off of her. And that is just such a blessing.
Well, I think it's interesting, and it's always the case. When we meet somebody today, we only see who they are today. We have no idea where they came from. We don't know their history. And my guess is, in your career as a healthcare professional, when you meet people, no one has any idea your story.
Right.
I wonder if you have had people who have, one, been integral in your story, in helping you as you transition through those really challenging seasons of life. And then secondly, I wonder if you have encountered situations where you have been able to then walk with somebody else through some similar circumstances.
Yeah, I think of, there are always people in the periphery, and sometimes we're not even aware of it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
when I was 21 years old until I was about 27, I was a waitress. And there was a man who used to come in and brought his whole crew in, for breakfast. And he was a Christian, and I knew he was a Christian, and this was before I was. And he just had a way of loving people. He never came and preached, but I knew he was a Christian. And I'll tell you, it was, after I married my husband, and I think I even had my son by that point. I was done with being a waitress. I was working as a paramedic, and I was a Christian, and I just thought, I have to tell Ron. He needs to know that I
Mm.
know that he was praying for me. And it was so awesome to be able to say, guess what? I got saved. So I have not seen Ron since I was about 28, 29, 30, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am 30 years later, and I wanted to share the story in my book because he made such an impact. He just was gentle, quiet spirited, but I knew he was a Christian and I knew that he prayed for me. And so anyway, I did share the story in my book, and I found him. I looked him up, and the business name is now under his son. But I said, hey, I used to be a waitress that waited on your dad, and I would love to chat with him. And his son gave me his number, and I said, I want you to know I put you in a book. And so I asked him if he would come to my release party. And after 30 years, I saw this man. And I mean, that was a full circle experience. That was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
to know that he was present all those years ago and instrumental in praying for me. I mean, one of the people, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're lucky. I don't think lucky is the word. We are blessed when that happens, because we do intervene for other people, and we may not get to see them until heaven to know how
Mm-hmm.
things turned out.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a situation where here down on earth, he and I both got to experience the fruit.
That is an amazing encouragement to us in our busy lives, because, you're talking to a lot of moms, and we think to ourselves, like, because sometimes when we're so busy with our children and the demands of our time, we say, okay, I know I'm ministering to my children, but I want to minister to the world. I want to minister to others. But our time is so limited, and we discount the fact that we can have an impact in people's lives at a soccer game, in the grocery
Mm-hmm.
store, at a cafe, when you stop and go through the drive-through and grab your coffee. Like, your life is an example of that opportunity that was taken instead of missed. And so I think that is a great encouragement to us. No matter where we are, ladies, you can pour into someone else's life.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 And then you asked about so that's what I feel like this book is, just because I know people have the same struggles. Life is
Yeah.
hard.
Mm-hmm.
And as parents and wives, and in our workplace, we just are up against the enemy in every place. So it's just, for me, the book kind of has moved into a place of, I'm partnered with God, and I hope that my story will speak to somebody who may be going through something similar to what I've experienced,
Mm-hmm.
and that God will bless them through it, that they could have healing or see a different way of approaching things, or having forgiveness where it feels like I can't forgive. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think we all go through seasons of that we've been hurt so much that it's so difficult to forgive, and yet we're called to forgive. And so I had a person who did read my book that has a lot of anger. And that person said to me, your book is an inspiration to me, because it's making me see this pain in a different way. It's showing me how I can have grace and forgiveness. And I don't think that's me. I really believe that's the Lord working in that person's life.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's what we're called to do.
You're like, I'm just telling my story. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, Ron didn't preach to me when I saw him in the restaurant, but he was an ever-present person, and he just loved people. I mean, he was good to his crew. He came in, he bought breakfast for his crew, and he did it on a regular basis. And he always left a good tip. There were times when he brought gifts to me, and I knew what that was all about. I knew what he was doing. He was a wonderful family man. And for him to be used by the Lord and to model like good Christian behavior, walking out the works that God has created for any one of us. And I think we just need to be mindful, and we need to be looking, because he has things for all of us every single day. But like you said, our lives can be so busy that we just don't see opportunities to share his love with other people.
Mm. Do you find that in your, I know it's hard in the healthcare field to be able to sometimes share your faith. Appointment times are limited, and sometimes, documentation of things and also locality, it can limit that. But maybe it's not even in your office. Maybe it's in your personal life or at your church. Have you been able to find some people who maybe have struggled in similar ways, and you've seen the Lord take your life and directly use it to minister to someone else?
Oh, yeah. So there's alcoholism in my past. And that's just one example of I can think of a couple of friends who had issues with alcohol and that wasn't recognized. And so I was sensitive to what I was seeing. Like in the workplace, it wasn't recognized, but I recognized it. God opened my eyes, and I have I had the type of relationship with them that I could say, listen, this is no way to live, to just be honest. And some people say that I am blunt. And that's a gift and a curse, but it is just who I am, right?
Mhm.
I tend to be blunt, but in relationships with profound respect and mutual respect, he has used me to speak into their lives. And those friends they don't drink anymore.
Mm.
And it was because I loved them where they were. And that's one example. This is kind of going out there, but I went on medical missions and had an opportunity to pray into the lives of a mother and a son. I mean, this is just one experience, but the son couldn't speak and he had seizures, and the mother, they walked like 2 miles to get to our clinic. And immediately I went, I have nothing. I have I'm not going to make this kid talk.
Right.
And so what I had was my faith. And I prayed for this child and asked God, please just give him his voice and let him use it to praise you. So
Mm.
sometimes that's what we need is it. I mean, that's what we need to do is we're called to pray for people. And God put this kid and his mom in front of me and I prayed. Now, the kid went through, after he left our clinic, he went around to counseling where we had a prison pastor who was traveling with us, and such amazing faith. This pastor was basically prostrate on the ground praying for this kid, and the leader of the mission trip came walking in and said, who had the kid who couldn't speak? And I said, I did. And he said, you want to see this? And the kid and his mother walked in. The kid's hands are raised in the air. And he says, Yesu Kitano, which in his language means Jesus is Lord. He was speaking, and he was an answer to prayer. And so,
Mm.
yeah, this was a million miles away from home, not literally, but and I had an opportunity to pray for a kid. If I hadn't been obedient and gone on the trip, if I hadn't just reached out in faith, that wouldn't have happened. So I'm not saying everybody needs to go on a mission trip, right? What I'm saying is God puts opportunities in our lives for us to pray for people, to whether we pray with them or pray for them or pray them into salvation, whether we model healthy behavior that makes people look at us and say, I want what she has. It's just about serving the Lord and being mindful of what's he asking me to do? How can I serve him today? Because the fruit that comes from that is eternal. And to partner with, it always puts me in awe to think, okay, the one who created everything and he's asking me to partner with him, it just blows my mind. I just can't, like, how it just blows my mind to think of that, right?
That's pretty incredible. But,
Mm-hmm.
when whatever we do, if we do it because Christ lives in us. He's kind of partnering with himself, How
Yeah.
can you lose?
Right. Right.
Right. As long as
Good.
we are obedient to follow, listen to the Lord. Yeah, I think that's great. So,
Mhm.
well, it has been fun getting to know you a little bit today. And I appreciate you sharing your testimony. And when we were chatting in Facebook Messenger, you just said so many times redemption, redemption, redemption. The Lord has taken your life and made it new. And now you can use your voice to share with other people the good things that God has done. And you know what? We can all do that. And we can all have an impact on those people around us if we're just listening to the Lord and taking those opportunities. And
Mhm.
so today, as we close out, I do want to find out what your website is and any socials you have. And then I'm going to have you pray to close us out. So, where can we find you?
So my website is kimdotson.com. So KIMDOTSON.com. Facebook, Kim Dotson. I have a YouTube channel. It's NDN author 60, like Indian author, right? NDN
Oh, clever.
60. That's Instagram and YouTube.
Okay. And I will link those into the show notes. So that should just be a simple click away. And ladies, if you want to join me for a little chat over in the Tending Fields Moms group this coming week, we can chat about God's faithfulness in your life and ways that He has been able to use you, and even share with ways that other people have ministered to your heart in an area where you just weren't expecting it. And then, there she was, somebody who encouraged your heart. So, Kim, as we close out, would you just pray for the women and whatever God calls us to do in our days?
Sure. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to share with women that we can't see, but we know they're out there. We know people are hurting, and we know that people need your love and a relationship with you, Lord. So I just lift those people up to you now, and I pray that if there's somebody who's heard something that just kind of stirs something in their heart, Lord, that they would reach out. I pray that you would put Christian women in their lives to minister to them. I pray that your perfect will be done in their lives. And I pray that they would or reach out to myself or to Pam if they don't know how to go. But I just know that Lord, it's no coincidence that they were listening to this podcast. Father, you have this for a purpose, and your purpose is creating relationship with people for their salvation and for eternity. So I thank you for that, Father. I give you praise, and I ask these things in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for being here with me today, Kim, and everybody listening. I look forward to meeting with you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope that you've been encouraged or challenged in your faith today, and that something we discussed prompts you to grow deeper in your walk with the Lord. If it has, make sure you tell a friend so they can grow along with you. And if you or a friend would like to be a guest and share about God's faithfulness in your life, please email me at podcast@tendingfields.net. Because when we tell of God's faithfulness, we never run out of stories.
Whatever is true, whatever is noble, think on these things.